So we have about 2 weeks until the Criterion channel officially launches, and I know as soon as it does, I'm going to browse the website extensively. Unfortunately, I can't get like dragged into it too much and like let it take over my life the way I want it to, and the way it will eventually. But my school term actually ends in late April, so I'm gonna have things to study for and projects to work on and stuff like that before I can allow the Criterion channel to take over my life. Criterion has been promoting it a little bit more lately, and it's gotten me really excited for it. I know that having more films on the Criterion collection available to me is going to help me to actually like fully discover the films that I only know by title or just a little bit about, and I'm excited to discover new favorites. So I thought before the launch of the Criterion channel, I would make a list of my top 10 favorite Criterion films. And so that's what this is. So these are my top 10 favorite Criterion films. I gave myself a bit of criteria for it. Obviously, I have to have seen it in order for it to be considered a favorite. So I have to have seen it. Although I'll mention this even though it doesn't actually make a difference, but I was only thinking about the films that are in the main collection, the ones that have like spine numbers, as opposed to like the Eclipse sets. It wouldn't have made a difference had I considered the films that I've seen from Eclipse sets, but I'll mention that as a criteria because it's what I was thinking at the time I was making the list. And the third thing is that I was basing it solely on the film. So although Criterion has amazing supplements most of the time, like 9 out of 10, their supplements are spot on and like help me to appreciate the film more and like the film more, I was really only going for the movie itself. So I actually went on Criterion's website and looked at all the titles that they've released. Of course, I own most of the titles that I've seen. There are titles that I've seen that have been released since I got into the Criterion collection and perhaps just have like a different edition of, and I haven't upgraded it to a Criterion release, stuff like that. I could make a list of like 11 through 20 and have like a top 20 list if you would be interested in that. I had a good list of other films that almost made the cut, but maybe it's been a while since I've seen them, or I just don't watch them as often, or they're still like favorite films. Mine also, I think that's something else I should mention, that although these are my top favorite Criterion films, they are just like some of my favorite films overall. So here is kind of also a list of my favorite films. Just a couple more things to mention before I actually get into the list. Sorry, it has a bit of an introduction, but I didn't want to limit myself in any way or restrict my choices, other than obviously having seen them, because that already limits it so much, considering that Criterion is almost at 1,000 spine numbers, which is insane. But I really like French films and I really like films from the 60s, and so I wasn't thinking like, oh, only pick 2 French films and only pick 2 from the 60s. I wasn't limiting myself in any way like that, or trying to make sure that I was like checking boxes and getting a film from each like decade or in different countries. Just these are the films that I love the most. Obviously, it's personal preference, and I'll get into details of why they are my favorites. And also tell you what they're about. It's not really in any sort of order. I did try to rank them, but like top 10 is my top 10. The only one that I think really is in its specific place is number 1, because it's my favorite film, which if you've been watching my videos, you probably already know what it is. And so I'm not going to talk about that one too much. Obviously, I'm going to save that one to the end though, and I'm going to go in backwards order, starting with number 10. So here we go. Number 10 is Picnic at Hanging Rock from 1975. This is an Australian film and it is spine number 29. I have the dual format edition, so although I was only thinking about the film, it does come with the book by Joan Lindsay. Yep. And Picnic at Hanging Rock is such a... it's so aesthetically pleasing, but the film itself isn't necessarily satisfying because it has more of an open ending. You don't really know what happens. And it's about a group of girls who go to a boarding school and they are going on a picnic for Valentine's Day. And it takes place, I think, in like 1900. And at some point during the picnic, 3 of the students and 1 of the teachers ends up going missing. And it's really about the effects of that, the effects on the community, and the school and the other students that, you know, have been living basically with these girls who went missing, and what happens with that, and the search for them, and non-answers. I did read the book, so I went into it knowing, you know, what is in the book and assuming that it would be an accurate adaptation, which it is, but I love the film more. It just has like an aesthetic that I'm really into. It's very ethereal and like otherworldly, and I feel like Hanging Rock is a character all itself, and it's a film that the more times I watch it, the more interested in the characters I am, the more I try to like get into their psyche more, and I could like go into specific scenes, but I feel like this video would be way too long if I decided to do that. Oh, also it's directed by Peter Weir. I don't think I mentioned that, but I was trying to make sure that I got the title and the year and the country that it's from and the spy number and all that, but I forgot to say the director. It's Peter Weir. Yeah, so I highly recommend this film. It's one of my favorites. Number 9 is a more recent favorite. It is The Silence of the Lambs, directed by Jonathan Demme from 1991. Spy number 13. This was recently recently enough, re-released. And I've talked about this in a previous video, so if you want like more thoughts, I'll link that in the description and in the card. But I got this mostly because it's one of my friend's favorite films, and it had been a while since I had seen it. I mean, it's known as like this critically acclaimed... Sorry, something just fell on my shelf. It's known as this like critically acclaimed horror film. I think it has more of like a detective thriller psychological aspect in my opinion than like strictly horror, but that's definitely an element. And I saw this, it's bothering me so much that I still can't figure it out, but I either saw this in high school or like closer to like maybe 6th or 7th grade, and I wasn't that impressed with it. I didn't understand like why it was such a well-known film. Wrong. I don't know what I was thinking then, because I watched it, I got this last summer, and then I watched it in October, and I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, how did I not like this the first time I saw it? But this time around, well, in October, upon rewatching it for the first time, I was able to pick up on things that I really like in movies. I really like close-ups and centered framing, and like the score of this is really good, and it was just really impactful. And of course, I really like the psychological aspect as well. That's something that I gravitate towards when it comes to just storytelling in general. I think it's a really well done film and super engaging. It's about Clarice Starling, who is an FBI agent in training, and she gets put on this case to sort of interview Hannibal Lecter, who is this known serial killer cannibal who is currently in prison, and there's another serial killer that they think he's connected to that he can help identify, and so Clarice is interviewing him, trying to get information out of him so that they can catch this other killer. Then I have the first Criterion film I ever bought, The Royal Tenenbaums, directed by Wes Anderson from 2001, and spy number 157. This one I think it's definitely my favorite Wes Anderson film. It is the quintessential Wes Anderson film, in my opinion. Nothing is too overly done in terms of his style and the way that he makes films. But I don't think it's underwhelming, and I don't think it's overwhelming. I think it's just like the right amount of Wes Anderson. I don't really know who my favorite director would be now, but for a while, Wes Anderson was tied with Jean-Luc Godard as my favorite director. Um, I I don't really have a favorite director anymore, I don't think, though. But this is about the Tenenbaums, which is a family, a dysfunctional family. That's another sort of thing that I like in movies or stories, dysfunctional families. And the three kids, when they were younger, they were like prodigies, and now that they're older and like real adults, they're not so much. They're not living up to the potential that everyone thought that they would achieve. And then they all decide to move back home and live with their mom. Their parents got divorced, and then the dad tries to integrate himself back into the family by pretending to have cancer and like spend the time with his kids in that way by faking cancer. I think it has a good amount of humor, but also it is pretty dark. Like, this is something that has a trigger warning for like suicide and self-harm. I'm pretty sure many Criterion fans have seen this movie, and it's also a movie that gets people into the Criterion collection. So I don't want to spend too much time on each film. I'm trying to be very aware of that. The next movie, I don't actually have the Criterion release of, but I have it in this other release. It's Twin Peaks, but specifically Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, the movie, because Twin Peaks is a TV show. My favorite TV show. If you're new here, hello. I'm obsessed with Twin Peaks. I have it written down. It's by number 898, so it's later in the collection, and it's just something that I haven't gotten yet because I already have the movie in this, the entire mystery box set of Twin Peaks. So Fire Walk with Me is directed by David Lynch and from 1992. I mean, Twin Peaks is my favorite show, so I feel like this is a super obvious choice. I love David Lynch's films. Again, like, I guess if I had like a list of favorite directors, he would definitely be part of it, along with Wes Anderson and Jean-Luc Godard. I can't say a lot about Fire Walk with Me because it's the prequel to the TV show, so it's just like how Laura Palmer died and things leading up to the case, things that are happening in like Special Agent Dale Cooper's life before he is officially put on the Laura Palmer case, and other things that are happening like in the FBI and in the town, obviously, of Twin Peaks where the show takes place. Laura Palmer dies. That's not a spoiler, and it's like, I think it's a really beautiful film, but it's obviously very dark and super disturbing if you know like the spoilery parts of Twin Peaks and the film. Yes. I think it keeps just the right amount of like the quirkiness from Twin Peaks and adds that darkness. The film is definitely a lot more darker than the TV show, but I think it still has, it tries to balance it, especially like in the beginning, kind of leaning more towards dark stuff at the end, obviously, when it's coming to the end of Laura Palmer's life. I also really love the cinematography and the score, which is another thing that I really like about the show. Oh, I have the score, actually. I have vinyl up here on my shelf that you can't see because I'm standing in front of it. I should do that video. That's another video I've been meaning to do, is showing you my records. I have a lot of soundtracks and scores. Moving on. Okay, what number is this? I'm going backwards. Number 7. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Then number 6 is Belle de Jour. This is a French film from 1967. The spine number is 593. And this is one of the first few films on the Criterion collection that I saw for when I was first getting into the Criterion collection. I was watching a handful of films, like knowing that they were Criterions, and this was one of them. Hopefully that was explained all right. I feel like I talk about this a lot. I mean, these are a lot of my favorite films, and so I feel like I've talked about them often. I also rewatch a lot of them often. I'm trying not to use the same words over and over again. But Belle de Jour is about Séverine, who is played by Catherine Deneuve, who's one of my favorite actresses. I literally say that same sentence every time I talk about this. She is married, but she's not intimate with her husband, and there's definitely a backstory to that, but it doesn't really go into it too much. You can tell that there's been some sexual abuse in her childhood, and that's most likely affecting why she is unable to be intimate with her husband, and so she decides to become like a high-end prostitute. And I say high-end because she's not like on the streets, she's like in an apartment building with other girls, and they like have rooms. Like I don't know, I don't really know if it's considered like high-end, but it's not like the way that I think of like Las Vegas prostitution, like girls in booty shorts and super high heels on the streets, that kind of thing. This is one that I really like the cinematography of. I don't really know why I like this so much. Sometimes it just has elements that I really like. It's a French film from the 60s. I really like Catherine Deneuve. This keeps going out of focus. I'm so sorry. I have like a lack of explanation as to why I love this film, but I do. Yes, this is one of my favorite covers. This is directed by Louis Buñuel. I'm pretty sure that's how you say his name. I'm trying to find it. Yes. And then number 5 is one that I actually haven't seen in a while, but it's another one that just like, oh my god, this is one of my new favorite films. Like, that was my reaction. And that's Persona, directed by Ingmar Bergman from 1966. See, I have a thing for like 60s films. This is one that I like really need to revisit. Yeah, I had this reaction of just, this is one of my new favorite films, and I can't even remember exactly what it was about. Like, I think I was a bit confused because I know that like Liv Ullmann's character is like the actress, right? She's admitted to like a hospital, and then this nurse takes care of her, and then they go to this island where she can get further treatment. But it becomes sort of like, does she actually need medical attention in some way, or is she using the nurse to like study for her next acting role? But also they're very similar and they become like one in ways. It deals with like identity a lot, and I got psychological stuff out of it, but again, it's kind of vague right now, like in my head, because it's been a while since I've seen it. Again, it's one that I need to revisit. I do remember like rewinding certain scenes and just watching it over again, whether it was to like read the subtitles and just like hear that again, or just to see what was happening on the screen and just like watch that again. This is another one that I just have like a lack of explanation for, although it was my first Ingmar Bergman film. And yeah, I was just really blown away. And I have seen more Bergman since, but this is still my favorite of his. Number 4 is just one that I talk about too often. Like, I think it's a little bit of a problem at this point, and that's Blue is the Warmest Color, which is spine number 695 from 2013, directed by Abdellatif Kechiche. I think that's how you pronounce it. I looked it up one time, and that's how I've pronounced it ever since. I watch this all the time. This is actually one of my go-to films, despite it being like 179 minutes, like a minute away from being 3 hours long. Yes. I know the story so well that I don't even have to pay attention to the subtitles anymore. And I mean, I took French in school, so I can understand things to an extent, but I'm like nowhere near like fluent in French. And I just love this movie. I love this movie. I like how like realistic the relationship is. Let's like not talk about the sex scenes because I do know that those are not realistic, and they're too long. The actors felt uncomfortable and like exploited, which I don't agree with. I don't mind like sex scenes and like nudity for art or just like in general, really. I'm not very like conservative. But when it's so much that the actors feel uncomfortable, like that's when I think there's a problem. And I don't like condone that in any way. But setting the sex scenes aside, the relationship is like really realistic, at least in my opinion. And it doesn't have that Hollywood happily ever after ending. They have their struggles. And actually, okay, something I want to mention, because I have to mention this before I just like completely forget about it. For some reason, I watch this every Valentine's Day. So I watched this on Valentine's Day and I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before, and I love when that happens. And that's something that happened last year too, that I also when I also watched it on Valentine's Day. So I don't know what that says about me. Let's ignore it. Okay. I noticed that so basically this is about Adele, who starts to have feelings for Emma, and she's just trying to figure out who she is and what her sexual identity is and have this relationship with Emma. That's the gist of the story. And at the end, spoiler alert, they're no longer together. And then Adele is going to Emma's art show and she's painting her toenails red. And then when they're at the art show, Emma is wearing red. And suddenly it's like, because there's so much blue in the film, and blue is supposed to like represent this time in Adele's life and her relationship with Emma, and the old Emma, and then the new Emma is red. But Adele paints her toenails red. I just think that's a sign, and I've never noticed it before. This is French, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. Blue is the warmest color. I love this movie. Number 3 is Harold and Maude from 1971. I know, like, all these years, I don't know why I'm looking at the back. The spine number is 608, and it is directed by Hal Ashby. And I just love this. It's just me. I love this movie. I love Harold. I love Maude. It's got, like, I don't really like the word quirky, but I don't know a synonym off the top of my head right now that I can think of to describe it, but it has like just the right amount of quirkiness, especially with such, it's another like dark film, but I love Harold and Maude as characters and their relationship, and I love the soundtrack. Oh my god, I just don't have an explanation for this. I just love this movie. Definitely trigger warning for suicide, attempt at suicide, even though it's like technically not, but still. And even with that being part of the film, I'm so happy when I watch this. It's very, it's just really enjoyable, even though it has like these dark themes in it. But also I think overall it's like about life and like living your life and loving. Number 2. Oh, by the way, if I don't like say that, I didn't say Persona is Swedish. See, I keep on meaning to say like the country or the language that the film is from / that's what language it's in, but I keep forgetting. I think that's the only one that I didn't mention specifically. Anything else is American and in English. This is the last American film. Number 2 is The Graduate from 1967. Yep. Spy number 800, directed by Mike Nichols. The 60s. It's my thing. This movie I've seen so many times though, and I'm so glad that having seen it so many times hasn't hindered my experience of it. I actually wrote a paper on this for a film course, and I had to like analyze it. Really good choice if you have an assignment like that. Really good choice. And I've seen it countless times. I've lost track because I watched it beforehand, and then I watched it a bunch of times for writing that paper, and then like watched it along with the audio commentary. Oh, I also have another release of this. I have like the Studio Canal Steelbook. This is about Benjamin Braddock. Oh, it's based on the novel by Charles Webb. And Benjamin Braddock, he just graduated college and he just like doesn't know what to do with his life now. He doesn't want to end up like his parents. He doesn't want to be a part of that like society, and he sort of acts out, and in this act of rebellion, he decides to have an affair with his dad's partner's wife. Yes. But then also he kind of starts to fall in love with her daughter. So that complicates things. This is another one that has a great soundtrack that I have on vinyl. And great soundtrack. So because I've like analyzed it, there's a lot more like the things that Mike Nichols did as director is just too much for me to go get into right now. But like a lot, and it's just really well done. There's a lot of symbolism. Also, I relate to Benjamin Braddock so much. That has a lot to do with why it's a favorite. Last but not least, number 1, my favorite film is Purple Noon, also known as Plein Soleil. It's French from 1960. The spine number is 637, and it's directed by René Clément. This is my favorite film. I made a video talking about why it's my favorite film, which I will link in the description and in the card. I'm not going to talk about it. Also, I'm going to run out of time. So, I just really recommend this. So thank you for watching. I would love to know what your top 10 criterions are, and let me know if you want a 11 through 20. So, thank you. Bye.